Frankie. Welcome to The Savage Situation.
Thank you.
I'm so pleased you're on. I'm really happy that you're here.
Me too. It's a warm room, but it's air-conned. It's quite warm outside. It's muggy.
It is very muggy in central London, very muggy. But the aircon is a blessing. It really is.
It is.
I mean, I'm so pleased you're here because there is so much to chat about. You've had the most incredible last few years, and we're going to go through everything. From the very beginnings to where you're at now and everything in between. Let's talk a bit about the origins of Frankie Ward, first and foremost. Let's talk about Baby Frankie. What was your first introduction to gaming growing up?
I can't remember if it was my dad's laptop or the Sega Master System.
Classic.
I think it was probably my dad's laptop. So he had this work laptop and it had text-based game Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And Monkey Island 2 we got, and I remember loading all 5 floppy disks on, and we had a game called Hugo Whodunit. So that's a sequel to another Hugo game. And I remember in the Hugo Whodunit, there was a scene where you had to get outside to a maze because you're basically trying to find your missing boyfriend. And
You're trying to find your missing boyfriend?
You're trying to find your missing boyfriend, Hugo, yes. Or you find out if something bad's happened to him.
Okay.
And so you have to get to a maze outside to find like a key or something. I can't exactly remember what you need to find in the maze, but to get there, you have to go past a gardener. And I remember in a different room, you find some garlic, you have to eat the garlic to get past the gardener. And just like solutions like that. I love those point and click games. So that was what really got me first into gaming. I was the only person in my family to ever complete Monkey Island 2. And actually a few years after I played it, because I think I first played it when I was about 5 or 6 and I finished it when I was 9. Might have used a little bit of a walkthrough just to get me through the end bit. But I played that again recently, which was really fun.
The exploits of Guybrush Threepwood.
Guybrush Threepwood, a mighty pirate, yeah.
It's a mouthful.
Yes, I completed Monkey Island 3 about 30 times a few years later because that came out around 97. And I lived in the countryside at that point, so I had nowhere else to go or nothing else to do apart from sit upstairs on the Pentium 2 computer. One of the songs, The Pirate I Was Meant to Be, I memorized off by heart. I was just obsessed with that game. But now when I look back at it, and I replayed that one recently as well, I was very upset because Elaine Marley is my favorite woman in gaming, I think. And she is the governess of, which island is it? She's the governor of an island in Monkey Island 2. And then in Monkey Island 3, she basically gets engaged to Guybrush. And in Monkey Island 2, she's already dumped Guybrush. She doesn't like Guybrush. She has to rescue Guybrush constantly. He's a liability.
You were very much involved in the Monkey Island storyline. The narrative has struck a chord with you.
Monkey Island 4 was terrible as well, so I'm very upset about it.
We've had the Fortnite World Cup recently. If there's a Monkey Island championship in the waiting, Frankie, I can't imagine anyone not winning that but you.
Oh
you know your stuff.
You know what my dream podcast interview would be?
Apart from this one.
Yeah, apart from this one.
Thanks.
But if I was to do the interview, it would be Ron Gilbert.
Yes,
from
okay.
Monkey Island. And also Tim Schafer from Double Fine, who worked as assistant director on Monkey Island 2.
That's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
he's an amazing man. I've been in a room with him a couple of times and he seems lovely. And I actually spoke to him very, very briefly at the Game Awards a couple of years ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, I met him once.
Cool.
He's a very cool guy.
He's cool. I'm sorry. I'm basically digressing.
No, it's fine.
My first games.
This is what we're here for. I mean, this is the thing, because obviously, you and I have work a lot in the gaming industry. It's a major part of our life, and esports we'll talk about and everything as well. But it's always nice to find out where someone actually begins in gaming, because everyone has had different entry point. Mine was like Wolfenstein and Doom on like my dad's PCs and the NES, and kind of games like NES Golf, Nintendo Golf and stuff. So everyone has their kind of own kind of entry point into it. So, and here we are today, covering all these different games like PUBG and CS and stuff.
My mum's friend Pauline, who unfortunately sadly she passed away recently, but I used to sometimes go around her. She was like not really a childminder as such, because she was my mum's friend. She had 2 daughters who were amazing. They were about 20, 23 or something. And they used to babysit me and my sister. And we go around Pauline's, and she had a computer as well. And that's when I first played Doom. So I was about 7 when I first played Doom. And it was just a demo. So I only played a demo of it. I never got beyond that. And I remember sort of jumping over the lava and things like that. And that was great fun. And there was another game. And I'm desperately trying to find out what this game was called. I can't remember. I think you had to collect letters. And there was purple slime involved, and it was a platform game. And I just can't remember what it's called. And it really annoys me.
Slime.
I've been Googling it. I cannot find what this game was called. I have no idea.
What platform was it on? Was it Festus
It was
Quest?
on PC.
Okay, PC.
No.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you play this guy, and I remember there was a level where you jumped up trees. There was one where you're in a castle. It's really weird because I really loved this game, and I cannot remember certain details about
We're putting it out there now officially. If anyone knows what this game is, I mean, we've given them quite a vague explanation.
Yeah.
Purple slime, climbing trees, collecting letters.
Yeah, probably
Let us
1995.
let us know on social media. Get in touch.
Please,
we want
please.
screenshots. Please save us. Go back to, I mean, you mentioned demos a second ago. I remember growing up and having those. The PlayStation magazine had like demo discs with every issue.
Yes.
Man, I used to love that. That was great.
Well, I bought my first PlayStation when I was 9. Because
Yeah.
when I was 8, I got cast in a Royal Shakespeare Company production, which makes me sound very posh. I went to Saturday Stagecoach, and I was had me a picture in the agency brochure, and I went along to this audition in London. Never ever was successful in pretty much any of my auditions, and this one, for some reason, it wasn't a speaking role. Maybe that's why I was successful. And so I spent like 6 months or something alternating with a girl as a bridesmaid for Queen Gertrude, played by an amazing actress who sadly no longer with us, called Susanna York. And I would basically dance on stage with an Irish actress called D'Urberville Crotty, who was playing Ophelia, and then just play with silly string, and then just walk off, eat bonbons. And then I was on stage for 5 minutes, basically. But with the money from that, I only spent it twice. And I'm sure I spent more of it now as an adult, but, you know, it was in my savings. I bought PlayStation 1 when I was 9. And then I bought a gaming / PC I could do schoolwork on when I was 16, and a pair of rollerblades, like 200 quid aggressive rollerblades.
That's all the three things you need in life.
Yeah.
A PlayStation 1, a PC, and some rollerblades.
Exactly.
That's perfect combo.
But the PS1, I couldn't afford to buy any games for it.
Okay.
So I used to
That is a
play
problem.
just the demo disc pretty much, or a couple of pre-owned games. So I never really had that many classics on my PlayStation 1. I had the demo disc, which had Tekken 3 demo on. I used to play that over and over. You could play Zayu and Paul. And it had a demo for a game called Buster Groove. And I actually found that pre-owned. And me and my sister played that obsessively. It was a rhythm game. And had
like
some
Parappa
really
the Rapper, do you remember those
catchy
kind of?
songs.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I never played Parappa the Rapper.
Yeah, it looked great though.
Yeah. Buster Groove, basically, you couldn't play it on a dance mat. You had, because there were combos with your PlayStation controller. So playing it on a dance mat would have been silly business.
Yeah.
But I was really, really good at it. My favorite character to play was Frida, Surfer Girl. And I also got Tekken 2, and I was obsessed with Tekken 2.
So good. I was a Paul fan. I like Paul.
Yeah.
I could get Yoshimitsu.
Yoshimitsu's great because you can make him look like he was humping himself. You could commit seppuku.
You could.
Paul, bit basic bitch for me.
Yeah, bit basic.
Yeah, bit basic bitch.
Yeah, well, yeah, I had the combos down. Straight off the mark, I could smash someone up very quickly. So
Yeah.
here's my guy. Extraordinary hair.
Yes.
Extraordinary
hair.
Growing up, access to all these different games. You had so much, I guess, a wealth of knowledge as well. You kind of really building up your library in the gaming space.
I mean, I used to read, when I got older, I read stuff about stuff on Wikipedia because I couldn't afford to buy it. So,
Yeah.
or again, when I finally got PlayStation 2 when I was 15, I just buy pre-owned games because I couldn't afford full
I
price.
used to canvass free ads. Do you remember free ads? I don't know if it was like a yellow newspaper, and every single Saturday, be like, right, who's selling stuff cheap?
Yeah,
Destruction Derby 2 for £3. I want it. I'm all
so
over
good.
it. It was good times.
Yeah, my sister had an N64.
Yeah,
So,
I think it's GoldenEye.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Great. I mean, what was the point then for you? Obviously, you know, schooling and such, and you go into you begin working in the gaming industry. What was your entry point into working in games? And actually, it was a job as such.
So my origin story in gaming was 2015, and I was working as a senior content producer at the BBC for a product called BBC Live. Very boring, but to explain what that is, for the Olympics, the BBC developed a live platform because they had all these sports that they needed to show, but they couldn't show them all on TV at the same time, so they had live streams, essentially.
Yeah.
And then with that, they'd have text commentary, and that was a really popular product, we would call it. And so that's used, you know, if you're into cricket and say you're at work and you can't watch the match or listen to the match, then you could just look at the text updates. But if you could listen as well, the feed would be embedded in that page as well. So you have the option to listen as well as look at the updates. You put in social media, all that kind of thing. So it's kind of like a live blogging platform with a visual or audio element if you have that.
You're an OG in the blogging space. That was you, Frankie.
This is 2015. So I've been blogging since about 2008. So I used to be part of the like hyper-local blogging scene in Birmingham. But that's another story for another time. Hyper-local blogging kind of didn't really take off.
God,
Birmingham was an amazing place.
Amazing.
I went there as a student, and it helped me get into media. So I worked in radio, I worked mostly as digital producer. And so I was working on a project around League of Legends. Now, it's very hard for the BBC to cover video games because of something called undue prominence, because if they show one game, they should show another because it's a commercial product.
Yeah.
But because League of Legends was taking place in Wembley and it was the quarterfinals of the World Championships, there was an excuse for the BBC to try and get its feet in there and actually test the waters a bit.
Was it broadcast on BBC Three, this? I think
it was a BBC Three, BBC Sport project, but it was only online.
Okay.
So this was just before BBC Three went online only.
Yeah.
Because that happened in around February 2016, March 2016, I believe that happened.
And you obviously got a bit of a buzz out of being surrounded by gaming, being involved in that kind of space.
So yeah, I built the website and I was essentially editing the text coverage with a caster called Richard Cam, aka Pulse. It's where I worked with a guy called Joe Miller, who's the head of talent at VSL, and he was running the broadcast from Riot side because he used to be a Riot caster, and also Lee Demon Smith, who also used to be a Riot caster. So James, Stress, O'Leary, and Demon were doing the casting. Julia Hardy was our roving reporter, who's an incredible gaming host. We had Dev from Radio 1 hosting the sort of desk part of the broadcast and asking the questions that newcomers needed to know. But I just really enjoyed it because we didn't have a system like Twitch chat. So I was getting feedback from the audience via Twitter and via Reddit, just on my personal accounts. And I also would try and get to know the audience by just chatting to them. Everyone had a really good vibe. Everyone was really enjoying the games. Like, the atmosphere was electric. There were like 11,000 people in Wembley's SSE Arena watching this. Which
is enormous, but when you compare it to like some places like in Asia where they fill out stadiums of like 40,000, you think, gosh, it is incredible. It really is.
This is nearly 4 years ago. I remember being on the train, putting my lanyard on, and a guy coming up to me and being like, "Oh, sorry, do you work for Riot Games?" And I was like, "No, actually, I work for the BBC." And he was like, "Oh, we heard you were doing stuff and people are saying it's really good, but I'll let you walk on your own." And I said, "No, man, we got to walk to the stadium together." And so we had a little chat, and then later on in Reddit, he said he'd spoken to me. And I thought that's really cool that the audience is they're social. They're actually really open to communicating, to giving feedback and things like that. And I think sometimes when we talk about esports communities, people think of them as being very, I guess, closed off and not
quite exclusive.
Receptive to new people. But actually, they were very happy that the BBC was trying something. Yeah. And because of that project, I enjoyed it so much. I just thought, because I was working on so many different things. I was like doing live coverage of The Apprentice, Bake Off. The last show I ever did at BBC was called Trainspotting Live. I was doing Radio 3 opera stuff. I was doing so many different genres, and I wanted to specialize in something, and gaming is something I've always done and I've always enjoyed. So I discovered Twitch from doing that project and decided to look up jobs there, and there happened to be this basically a producing role going. Yeah. And then nearly a year later, to be honest, July 2016, I got my first full-time gaming job.
And that was at Twitch?
That was at Twitch, yeah.
And what was it when you got a full-time job working in games? Was it kind of like I've made it, I've done it, I'm there now, I'm in amongst it all? Did you feel straight away that it was what you were destined to, kind of the kind of area that you were supposed to be working in, or how was it when you first got there?
I don't know. I was just really excited to be working in games because I hadn't realised that I could get a job in the gaming industry. Because obviously when you think about the gaming industry, you think, oh, it's someone who makes games. But actually there's so much more around it. And it's so obvious. It's obvious. Why did I not think of that sooner? But I'd never thought of working in games before I did that project for the BBC. So suddenly I was there and I was really happy. And I was like, well, I don't want to go anywhere else right now. I'm really happy doing this particular job. There were areas to develop and things like that. And lots of people to meet. And I wasn't really part of the Twitch community before I joined Twitch. So I decided to start streaming in the office. Then I built my own PC so I could stream at home, and I was streaming on PlayStation. I got hyper optic, like high-speed broadband installed, because before I had like up-down of less than a meg. So I realised I needed to... Yeah.
Nice. So I invested that's great.
In 50 meg instead.
Wow.
So I could
Were you using floppy disks as well?
I mean, I might as well have been, yeah. So I started doing that and then really became part of the community and started working a lot with charities on their broadcasts, made friends with a lot of streamers, particularly from the UK. I'd work all around Europe producing shows at places like Gamescom. I'd go to like Poland, for an event called Pods and Gamery, and I go to TwitchCon in the US.
And
I
and
just go around everywhere.
those relationships as well, like the networking in gaming as well, is so important. It helps so much. Getting forward, knowing the right people and knowing everyone, just like it would be in traditional kind of telly or on the kind of film, music. You having those relationships, I think, makes a massive difference to everything.
And I was so surprised at how welcoming people were.
Yeah,
people were just not like, oh, she's just an imposter or that kind of thing. People were really keen to, chat. And maybe that was because I work for Twitch. I don't know, but it was really cool. And even since leaving Twitch, people are still lovely. People are still my friends. It's great.
Was it a big? Obviously, you've gone from working as a producer and now you're in front of camera. You're hosting, desk hosting, stage hosting. What was the transition from working as a producer into working as talent as such? Because that's quite a big leap. I guess the opportunity there's got to be a moment that suddenly everything kind of the big bang happened and it was like, right, Frankie's arrived. What was that moment?
Well, I started doing hosting on the side when I was working for Twitch as a producer, because I'd pop on stage, because I often budget meant I could have 2 hosts and I'd be producing 8 to 10 hour shows.
That's a lot. That's a long time.
Like at Insomnia's LAN in Birmingham, I'd run the esports stage, put the finals on, and then have some content by creators as well, so Twitch partners, and I'd have a couple of people anchoring that. But they also didn't really know how to talk about esports. So there was one event where I literally had an in-ear piece to them, and I'd sort of organised a desk segment or desk style segment about the League of Legends final that was coming up, and so I got the casters to come on and just introduce the teams and things like that to my host, and I'd write the questions for them. But then I'd be on an earpiece to them. I'd just be like, ask about who's going to get first blood, and I'd just be guiding them through. And luckily the casters could actually hear me, that the audio wasn't isolated to just my host. So the casters would be like, right, okay, we need to ease our host in kind of thing. Yeah. I think I realized I was a lot more interested in it than some of the hosts I was working with. And that's not their fault at all, because they were Twitch partners and they're interested in video games that they played, and they wanted to do stuff with the other creators, and that made sense. The esports thing was something that happened to be happening on the stage as well.
Yeah.
So
were you always keeping tabs on what was going on in the esports space in general?
Yes.
Anyway,
yeah,
just
I was
out of
trying
interest.
to. Yeah, absolutely. So particularly Counter-Strike, and also when Overwatch League started as well.
Yeah.
I actually was really wanting to maybe work with Overwatch, but I couldn't because I had a full-time job. So
quite a leap of faith, isn't it, as well, when you go from having a full-time paid salary and then suddenly going, right, am I going to go freelance, put it on the line and just hope that it works out? It is a big jump to make.
I had a full-time safety net that I loved, but there was always part of me that kind of wanted to try hosting. And then I started co-hosting Jinx TV, The Bridge, and I remember that show starting a year before and watching it and being like, I could do that.
Which is kind of where we first kind of met as well. I think at Jinx, because hosting shows at Jinx as well, like now it's predominantly an esports network, whereas when I kind of first started there, it was like a more kind of gaming entertainment, MTV kind of style kind of attitude towards different formats. And I remember seeing you very briefly on a couple of occasions, like, this is when you were kind of doing more, I think, what kind of shows were you hosting? Was it, you said The Bridge?
I did The Bridge, and then straight after I left Twitch, maybe even the week after, I did a 6-part show about Fortnite.
Okay.
How to play Fortnite. But,
how to play Fortnite.
Yeah, but I've I've hosted This Week in Esports once since then, kind of. So I go back to Jinx occasionally, just because they need someone to fill in or something like that.
I always felt it was a good place to learn a number of skills at Jinx. I learned tons of different stuff, over the years. But obviously, from Jinx, you then I mentioned this earlier on before we started on the podcast here. But for me, the big thing I think that happened in your career was when you did the PC gaming show at E3, and suddenly, wallop. Frankie had arrived on the big. I mean, that's a big gig as well. The E3 is the biggest gaming show in the world every year, and there you are fronting one of the biggest live events that there are there.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was mad. Yeah. I first learned that they were interested in me because I was working at Twitch, and Twitch does co-streaming, and Twitch Studios, who I was a part of, the team in the US, it was just me in Europe on my own. They'd had a meeting with the various different producers of the press conferences at E3 to discuss Twitch partners co-streaming and the official live feed on Twitch and things like that. And they had mentioned looking at me as a host. My friend Britt actually messaged me and said, "Are you doing the PC gaming show this year?" And I was like, what? Do you mean I did a PC gaming show in London, like weekend thing in February, so maybe they were talking about that, but no. And then a week later, my agent messaged me and was just like, "So PC gaming show E3, they're looking at you if you're free." And I was like, what?
That is massive. Yes, it is extraordinary. Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, and then I lost my job at Twitch, and then a week later I was booked for PC gaming show, and I was booked for a show in Austin, DreamHack Austin, desk hosting PUBG as well, because I basically got made redundant and sent off a load of emails. I got made redundant in the afternoon, went to a Costa Coffee around the corner from the Jinx TV studios, started winging off some emails, had just finished a show with it, luckily, and then went and hosted the last episode of The Bridge.
Wow.
It was a busy day, you could say.
Yeah, but thank goodness that round the corner was this PC gaming opportunity.
Yeah,
and you didn't have to kind of, being made redundant is always a bad thing anyway, but then there's this opportunity. And you go out to LA and suddenly you're in front of the world showcasing the new PC games coming out in the year ahead.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Was that pretty daunting, or were you kind of just like grabbing it by the horns and just flying by the seat of your pants a little bit?
It was daunting, but so I just done a DreamHack Austin, desk hosting PUBG. And PUBG is a game that I had an affinity with because I know Brendan, aka Player Unknown, and I'd been making a film about PUBG before I left Twitch. So I'd come off the back of that show, and it was my third time ever desk hosting. My first time desk hosting in front of a live audience, actually present in the room, and it felt like it'd gone well. I got to be myself and just have fun with it. And so I was kind of buzzing from that. Then I got some bad news midweek and I was like, I had to pick myself up. But then I started getting sent trailers for PC Gaming Show, and I got sent the script and noticed there were some bits that hadn't been written. So I volunteered to write those, started script editing, and started really getting into it and going, okay, can I work this show so it feels like me as opposed to just me reading something? And the PC Gaming team were amazing, and they were so up for that. So when I got there, I've been staying in a youth hostel in Austin. So the first day, like when I landed and then sort of went into 8 hours of script rehearsal, I was so tired and I was really worried. And I met up with Sean, aka Day9, who has hosted that show since the beginning. And he's also the partner of my friend Britt, who I work with at Twitch. Okay. So I'd met Sean before, world, and I knew he was a lovely guy. Yeah. And he had this like really funny music. It was like almost like elevator music, but fun. It was kind of like bossa nova, and he just put a little earphone in my ear. And we're just like in the theatre, Walton Theatre, which is beautiful in LA. And we just like little like, and I was like, okay, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. And we did that on the morning of as well. He just put it on his phone and we're just like, I turn my phone on silent and go and do the show up in the balcony. And it is terrifying, but I have fun. The audience seemed to enjoy it. At one point, I had to tell the audience to behave themselves because I made a joke. And their reaction to me telling them to behave themselves was actually louder than the joke itself. Yeah. It was around a game called Maneater. So I kind of got known on Reddit as the Maneater after
I remember that, the joke very well. I do.
My dad actually texted me after that because I texted him and said thanks for watching because his wife had put up a picture on Facebook of them watching me on an iPad. Yeah. And so I texted and said, I hope you enjoyed the show. Thanks for watching. And he just replied, did you write the Maneater joke? And I said, yes, I did.
Yes, I did.
It was crazy.
It makes a massive difference because, when you're, I remember when I first starting out as well, and you kind of get given a script or get given something, someone else has written something for you. Yep. And you think, I would never say that in that kind of way. And you try and say it, it doesn't feel natural. When you actually get a chance to write something yourself, you feel more of a part of it and you kind of have ownership of it and you can kind of roll with it. And having the ability just to kind of, be yourself, as you say, that naturally it adds so much. The pressure kind of really dies down, I think, when that happens. And you can kind of really just kind of, ease into it and just, and own it.
If you've hired me, you want me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or if you've hired you, you want you. So it's really important.
I remember starting out way back when, and I was like, so I want to be a bit like Zane Lowe and a bit like Steve Jones, and then with a bit of that, and I was trying to be. I was thinking, why am I trying to be other people? Yeah. Why am I trying to be like that person? Yeah. Just be this guy. I can, and if it works, great. If it doesn't, and I'm a terrible person, and I shouldn't be doing this because
You should definitely be doing this.
But luckily it was okay. Luckily it was okay, and here we are.
Yeah.
And then obviously you did the PC gaming show, and as you say, things just I remember just it blowing up for you. It went wild, and you started doing loads and loads and loads of stuff. And you've worked, as you say, across PUBG, CS, and
loads of PUBG last year. Yeah.
What's been some of the highlights for you over the last kind of 12 months?
I think just getting to work pretty solidly and the people I've worked with. I had to make a big decision in, I think it was November, December, to commit to something. And it would have been a big life change. And I decided that it wasn't quite right. And there were some personal reasons why as well.
Was it to a project or to a game? Okay.
To a project. And it was really hard. It was so hard. And
why was it so hard, Frankie?
Because it was like a dream. It was a dream thing to do. But the circumstances at the time just were not quite right. So I had to say no. And the end of last year was tough because of that. I thought, oh my God, what if I never work again? And I just signed up to do McLaren Project Shadow in January, and a mobile project, MEO by Red Bull, which was in Germany. I didn't necessarily have anything else on my slate then. And then I got booked to do Splatoon 2 in Stockholm between those two events. And then when I was at McLaren, I got a message confirming that I was going to be going to the major. And the major, basically IEM Katowice, Valve, Counter-Strike major, the first one of the year. So 2 a year. And basically companies like ESL, Faceit, etc., they pitch events either made for a major, or they pitch an existing event to be a major to Valve, who publish Counter-Strike and also publish Dota 2.
Yeah.
And so
it's very similar to so majors, they come around, as you say, once or twice a year. This is in Counter-Strike, and you were talking like top prize. Is it $1 million? Is it $1 million, or is the?
I think the prize pool is about that. Yeah,
about $1 million.
And 24 teams go to the major, so you have 16 in the first two stages, and then 8 in the final arena stage. There is different ways to qualify for the major. You can play in to get to the minors, or you might be invited to the minors because you got through to the challenger stage, but you didn't get any further in the previous year. I'm not exactly sure how the direct invites for the minors work, so I should probably don't quote me on that. And then
it's all very confusing. Yeah, it's all very confusing.
If you got to a certain stage in the major, the previous major, then you will get directly invited to the major itself.
Yeah.
So that's why we have 8 teams come in at the second stage of the major, known as the Legend stage, because they got through to the arena stage of the previous event. At the first week of the major, the Challenger stage, if you got through to the Legends and you won at least one match, then you get through to the first week of the major. So I desk hosted something called the Gamdon Premier. That was my first Counter-Strike.
The Gamdon Premier.
Yeah, like a tier 3, tier 4.
It sounds fabulous.
Event. Yeah. That was my first CS desk host. That was my second ever desk host.
Wow.
And then I desk hosted the Faceit Minor, the America's Minor in London in July. And I'd done interviews for Star Series 6 in Kiev. So that was in October of last year. So I'd done 3 Counter-Strike events. So really the community did not know me. And suddenly I was doing interviews for Katowice. And one, it's an Intel Extreme Masters event, IEM. They mean so much to me because I've watched them, the music. That was the big thing for me, was hearing the music in my ears. It's
insane, isn't it?
Absolutely crazy to me, and the fact it was a major,
because it's quite with esports. Obviously, there's the stage host role. We're on stage. The desk host is probably one of the most integral roles of the whole show, because obviously you're kind of working with the analysts on the desk. You're throwing to the commentators. You're kind of running the production as such, from like a on the stream and both internationally.
You keep things in control, right?
It's quite a big role, and to keeps timings and such, and things change like that. They change in a heartbeat in terms of how much time you have for things. So it's quite tricky.
Well, that's what I did mostly last year. This year I've mostly done interviews. So desk hosting wise, I desk hosted for DreamHack Open in Tours, France, which is a tier 2 event. And DreamHack Opens are amazing because they let new talent come through and give teams that experience as well. I mean, the one I hosted was won by Mousesports, who are a tier 1 team. They'd recently changed the lineup and things, so it was really great to see them working. Especially, they have a player called Chris J, who's been part of Mousesports for years. For me, he's the heart of Mousesports. He'd been benched And then Carrigan, who is a legendary in-game leader, most known for FaZe Clan, his time there. He'd had a really difficult time leaving FaZe. And then he'd put this lineup together and he put Chris back where he belonged in that lineup. And so it's just fantastic to see them doing so well. So going to IEM Sydney with them and then seeing them in France as well and just seeing them go from strength to strength. So I think they've qualified for the major through the minors. They're going to have an incredible run, and I just really like that team. They've got some great young talent, and then they in Voxic and a young player called Frozen. And then they have got, of course, they've got their stalwarts in Carrigan and Chris J as well. And it's just really, really exciting to see where they're going to go.
You've got to keep, I mean, all the names, you've got to keep so many tabs on players because things change.
Yeah.
Lineups, rosters change all the time for these teams.
It's a lot to learn.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
In my first week of the major, I then got booked to go and do interviews for a lot more Counter-Strike events. So I basically hit the road and was hardly home from, really, including the previous events I'd done, I hardly spent any time at home between mid-January and June.
Yeah.
The longest I spent in the country really all year until I had some time off in June was 2 weeks.
Because I mean we've been, I mean that's the great thing about this year actually. We've actually had a chance to work together a few times, which is great.
We have, yeah.
We work on the Blast Pro series together. So mine more of a stage hosting role, and you're interviewing, desk hosting, and we went to Brazil, which was pretty crazy. That was pretty amazing.
That was huge.
Went to Miami. We got Moscow coming up as well. If the visas come through, mind you,
if the visas come through, we're going to be
tricky
working
business.
together in Moscow. Can't wait.
But I want to talk about something which you mentioned earlier on about the community side of things as well, because it's a huge part of esports in general, as you mentioned, is kind of the exclusive nature of certain games and having the communities, and it is quite hard sometimes to break in and be kind of like an accepted tour de force talent, we want to call it, in that space. Have you found over the last year or two, have you found it quite tricky? Has it been quite an easy kind of transition? What's it been like for you?
I didn't really notice around doing CS events last year, the community, and maybe I just avoided looking at Reddit and things. And then around the major, I had to actually not look at Reddit because people said things that were not true, or people were really harsh. I get compared a lot to other women who do the same role as me, and they're my friends. And so that's just a weird thing. And that's often it's people preferring the way that one looks over the other. But also, actually, to be fair, my friend's friend Smix, who do interviews in Counter-Strike.
What a dude. Love Smix.
Smix, she's amazing.
Yeah,
she's a really good friend of mine, and we love each other and we support each other. And we also have very different interviewing styles. So that's the thing. Not every tournament organizer is going to want the same thing every time. So that's really nice. The fact that there is actually, it's not diversity just in the fact that we are women rather than men. It's actually that we're all very different from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really nice thing in the space, because it means that I don't have to take it personally if someone else is chosen over me, and hopefully they're exactly the same.
Mm-hmm.
It can be hard sometimes if you get that FOMO feeling if you're not doing an event. But you also have to support each other. And that's one of the things about esports is, there are less women, so we tend to be able to find each other quite easily and support each other. And there are some incredible women in this industry, and I'm very, very lucky. Like Shox, for example, who sometimes does host Blast. She went freelance this year, and she's known for League of Legends. She was at that event in Wembley in 2015. I walked past her in the corridor. I remember she was wearing a green dress. That does sound very creepy, but now she's a friend, and it's great.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
Well, I remember I hosted the Esports Awards last couple of years. I remember Shox won. I think she won Personality of the Year, and that's the first time I met her.
Yeah,
back in 2017, maybe 2018.
Yeah, 2017. Yes.
And I'd never met her before, and thought, oh, this is amazing. Personality of the Year. That's a pretty big title. And then suddenly here we are working together in the Blast Pro series. It's really cool.
It's really great. I will say that the community has got so much better because they got used to me. So there are still people who hate me, but I can, during an event, whether I'm working or not, I can pop into Twitch chat and say hello, what do you guys think of the games, all that kind of thing. And then everyone's really nice. Yeah, pretty much. It's lovely.
I recall when, I think it was the beginning of the year, that it was, I mean, as you said, people can be, everyone who's puts himself out there in front of camera in some capacity is going to have comments, and every 100 positives you get one negative, and that's the thing you focus on. But it can get overwhelming. I remember us chatting, and I felt terrible because you seem so down at times about how it was getting, because it was getting ridiculous. And you're a massive talent, and it's hard because when one of your friends, you see them kind of being given a very hard time in some respects, you just want to say, don't listen to it, but it's so hard not to, because it's there and it's online, it's everywhere.
Yeah, I got called a bitch when I was doing the major because of my questions. People were like, she'd make the players feel really awkward and uncomfortable, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no, I don't. If something wasn't working, then I'll ask them what wasn't working. I think I have softened a lot because building long-term working relationships with these players, and, I'm friendly with them and they're all great. And it's so much pressure to be doing what they're doing. I couldn't do what they're doing, obviously. Not just because I haven't got the talent, but just because that pressure is enormous. If a player said to me, win's a win, etc., well, I'd be like, well, actually, you did have some issues with, I might have asked them about their T side being, they had to reverse sweep, essentially. They had to come back from nothing. So why did they end up with nothing in the first place? I'm going to ask them about that because that's something they need to sort out, right? And people would think I was a terrible person for asking that question. And actually, I think in my job you had to be fearless. And I had BBC interview training. So I came into it from a angle where I was like, well, although I want the players to like me, I don't have to be friends with them because I need to do my job. And that was the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
So I want to tell their stories. That is the most important thing to me. But at the same time, if someone messed with me on camera and didn't answer a reasonable question, then I would want to know why they didn't answer my question. Yeah. So I might dig around with them and just try and find that out more.
I find you in esports as well. You get trolled quite. I get trolled all the time. You get trolled by a lot by players are quite hard to interview the best of times as well, because a lot have not had any media training. They're kind of they don't really want to say much, want to remain, cool and kind of distant from any kind of personal feelings about anything. It is a really tricky job. It's that because obviously in other, whether you're interviewing a musician or kind of an actor or something, there's an element of them trying to sell themselves and kind of be kind of really energetic and be very personable. Sometimes the players, they're like, no, I'm not going to say anything. It's going to kind of keep really quiet and make this really awkward on purpose. Yeah. And it's like, please give me something, please.
Players won't do that with me anymore.
That's great. That's really good. That's really good.
Usually in any game, but certainly in CS, they wouldn't do that to me.
Yeah.
Because the last time that really happened to me was interviewing Finnish team ENTS at Sao Paulo in Brazil.
I remember this.
It's hard to interview more than one person at the best of times, but I had a great time with MIBR. Brazilian team, who are one of my favorite teams just to hang out with in general. And they were the first team that truly made me feel welcome and made me feel comfortable in CS. They were just lovely. And ENTS, a team I had history with because I worked with them at Star Series 6. And there's almost this weird narrative that the community is kind of created because I was interviewing their in-game leader. Basically, their in-game leader, Alexi, or their coach, Twister, always does the interviews. And I was interviewing Alexi at Star Series, and he's quite a tough nut to crack, always not giving much away in his interviews, at least originally, because he doesn't talk about emotions, but he will talk about gameplay. So if you ask him the right questions, actually, he's fairly receptive, right?
Yeah.
But I said to him at Star Series, if you get through to the semi-finals, are you going to give me a smile? And I can't believe even now I'd said that, because I wouldn't normally say that. Yeah. But I was just finding it difficult to get a response from him. And he said, you can have a smile now. And I think that's when it kind of began. And so now people really look forward to me and Alexi doing interviews. Like at the major, he was the one who refused to talk about the issues that the team had, where they barely won, where they barely scraped through to the legend stage, the second stage of the major. Yeah. And then they got into the final against Astralis. So their story was amazing, but they did start out with some difficulties. And so when I questioned him on that, he was really harsh on me. And I said, well, if you play like that, you're not going to get through to the final stage, Alexi. Yeah. I was like, you're not going to win the major. And so again, I got mixed reactions on that, because we were both laughing about it. We were having a joke, but the community were like, oh my God, she's so awful. She's so mean. And now, when we appear on camera together, people screen grab it. There's this actually kind of gross copy pasta, which I don't like. It's copy pasta. We say it's copy and paste, basically. People post memes about it.
Yeah.
But when we did this interview in Sao Paulo, because all of the team were there, it was this peer pressure thing. and they barely answered my questions. And then a couple of them were at the end of the sofa talking in Finnish, and one of them had a headset on, so that audio was actually on the broadcast. But because I was trying hard, and I actually came out of that interview not looking bad, because everyone who watched it could see that the team were not cooperating.
Yeah.
And I think that's a good lesson for myself, but also for the players as well, which is like, if you do act like dicks, you're going to look like dicks. Like, that's the thing. Yeah. So, to be honest, everyone pretty much treats me with respect because I treat them with respect.
Oh, I think it's changed. Issues. I think it's changed drastically over the last few months. Like, kind of being, obviously following each other online and seeing how things, and comments have definitely become so much more positive, and it kind of makes you feel so much better about the job you're doing as well when people are more receptive to you being kind of being part of that community. It makes your job easier when you're doing interviews and things. You're not kind of second guessing yourself all the time. Like,
yes,
I'm totally. I mean, that I obviously this year we were both in Katowice at the same time, and you were doing CS the Major, and I was doing Fortnite. And I remember there was, and we even had some, a couple of comments that came through to both of us about hosting and like, do this better. And we're like, shut up. We're doing our jobs fine. Leave us alone. Yeah. And there's one comment that kind of gets to you, but you kind of have to brush it off. But I remember, I had the same kind of thing. And I remember doing an interview, and obviously it went a bit viral. That was great though. It was so funny. Oh God. I interviewed a cosplayer who was full on dressed in Fortnite, like a Fortnite cosplay, like the costumes from the game. And we're at a Fortnite event, and I asked what they must love the game so much because they're dressed fully, and she was like, "No, I like a completely separate game." And it went viral, and everyone was like, "Oh, that's really funny." I thought, I'm a terrible interviewer. I've messed up as a stage host. It's over. I'm rubbish. But as you said, like with the interview you did, it's like it's not me that looked bad. It was her, or it was that situation, not us personally. Yeah. But because you're in the moment, you feel responsible, like you've done something wrong. Mm-hmm. So it can be, particularly with big games like CS, like Fortnite, these massive, massive games where there are so many eyes now. I look at the Fortnite World Cup recently, which had, like, I think it was the most viewed esports event in history. But even like in CS, you're looking at like the Blast Pro Series, all these different events, the majors have hundreds and thousands, if not millions of views. Yeah. It can be nerve-wracking at first. Once you get past a certain point, it's all right.
Yeah, I never think about how many people are watching. I genuinely never think about it because the connection's there with the camera, and I'm so busy focused on what I want to ask the player.
Yeah.
And when I stage host now, because I've had to do that a few times recently, and I think it's the most difficult job in esports. My main thing is the audience that's there. So if there's an audience, stage hosting without an audience in some ways, I think it's even harder.
People actually, I think, who don't necessarily, because there'll be a lot of people listening who don't really know about esports that much. And we're mentioning kind of games and we're mentioning games, we're mentioning kind of players, and people are like, what are you talking about? The esports world is grown astronomically recently. The last few years, it is really, I look at got the international Dota 2, the finals coming up in end of August. I think it's at $33 million currently, the prize pool. We're talking about big money and big audiences. But, looking at the likes of Brazil you mentioned earlier on, we were in the moment and we captured videos and stuff there as well. But when you have like a Brazilian team like MIBR playing live in front of a Brazilian audience, the atmosphere there is something else. It is absolutely incredible when you have people just chanting, cheering, shouting, it's stamping their feet, clapping. It is a different world, and I think we're both super lucky that we kind of get to work in that as well, because it's an amazing thing to see.
Yeah, I had to stage host because OJ Borg couldn't make IEM Chicago recently, so I was doing sideline and stage hosting and recording links for an ESL Poland production, which I think actually goes out on Danish TV, called World of Esports. So I was so busy in Chicago, it's crazy. And I went out on stage on the first day just to warm up the audience, because I like to do a temperature check and just see how they're going to react to me when we're live. But the hardest thing was introducing the teams that were not Team Liquid, because there was only one North American team left. And so I was talking about ENTS, and I was like, any ENTS fans in the audience? I had a few boos, and I was like, you know what? You can totally do that when we're live. You want to boo ENTS? You can boo ENTS. I just need you to make some noise. Like, ENTS aren't going to mind. They love being villains. So let's hear it. And then I went out, and then, basically they did that for me, which was really good because I needed something. But really, everyone was just waiting for Team Liquid to come on. And my second day on that show, or on the arena show, the fourth day overall, was so much better than the first because there was only one final, right? So so I only had to introduce 2 teams. And with Ents, I was introducing first. There wasn't much of noise. And then with Team Liquid, you could really go for it. And then people went crazy. And I'm still learning to trust myself on stage. I'm still learning to permit myself to say more and to be myself, because I had it in my head for a while. I'm not this stage host. I'm not this stage host. I'm only here because someone else couldn't make it. And then I realized, well, actually, just because someone else couldn't make it doesn't mean I can't do the job, because otherwise they wouldn't have asked me to do it. And the audience in Counter-Strike, they do know me now, and I try and make a lot of effort to go to them as well. So obviously I'm streaming Counter-Strike at the moment. I will go to Reddit, not too often, but I will interact with Reddit. When I'm at an event, I will try and make the meet and greet. Sometimes like my schedule is crazy, like in Chicago, really busy, but I was desperate to go to a meet and greet just to sort of to see people. If people tweet me and say they want to meet me, I'll go out. And I'll go out into the arena and try and see people. Not assuming that everyone wants to meet me, but if I can't get on the microphone to do a temperature check with the arena before we go live, I'll literally go out into the show floor and I'll talk to people there and I'll be like, hey, so what's going to happen is we're going to play a 30-second intro video and then I'm going to come out. Can you please cheer? So I'll literally go out and I will talk to people. In fact, even if I do get to talk on the PA, I will go out and I will just shake hands and like just go and chat to people and just have a chat with them about Counter-Strike as well, because we're all there for the same reason. And I really like meeting the audience. Yeah. I really like finding out more of them. And partly that's probably the producer in me, but also it's just the desperate fan.
How the world has changed from playing Monkey Island back in the day to suddenly you're on your own, going into audiences solo and trying to rile them up, getting them ready for the event that you're about to host as well, which the journey's mad.
Yeah.
You mentioned as well, I want to talk about the future very quickly, but you mentioned as well about streaming. You're the only person I know who streams Counter-Strike and Twitch sings, and you do singing online as well, which is a very mixed bag of stuff.
Yeah, I do.
I like that.
I do Counter-Strike, so I'm learning to play Counter-Strike because I tried to play it when I was younger and my boyfriend didn't want me to join him at the LAN party, so there was no point in me playing it.
Okay.
Because I had no one to play with. And then playing Counter-Strike just solo queue is horrible, quite frankly. And I feel like I'm okay to say that because I think Valve, the publisher, knows that too.
Yeah.
So what I do is I open something called a Pop Flash server. And then we scrim. So I don't play ranked or like proper competitive. I invite people from my community to jump on the server with me. And then we play some Counter-Strike. And it's great because I'm getting better. It's really hard to ignore Twitch chat because they backseat game me. And it's like, I know what I did wrong. Yeah, I don't need someone to tell me. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Some people are like, oh, I can't watch this. It's too painful. It's like, well, go away then.
Yeah.
Because sometimes I have amazing moments.
Then they subscribe. And you're like, oh, great, thanks.
Great moments, actually. Yeah. Sometimes I headshot with a deagle, which is kind of pistol, and I'm very excited with myself.
That's a big moment. And then you might suddenly start doing a Britney number later on in Twitch Sings. I love that. And
I do Just Dance streams. So but normally with Counter-Strike, I finish with a Twitch Sing stream, or I get my guitar out and I'll play some stuff. So
the multi-talented Frankie Ward right there.
I don't know about that, but people request songs that aren't on Twitch Sing, so I just grab my guitar, doing like the Smiths the other day because they only have This Charming Man on Twitch Sing, so I thought I'd try and learn There Is a Light That Never Goes Out because I've never actually played it before, I don't think. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna give it a go.
Yeah, nice.
But I'm like covering songs like by The National and stuff, so I think people probably don't even know what I'm singing half the time on that channel. But I want to, bring certain artists to wider attention. So it's
absolutely. And in terms of the future, what are you working on at the moment? And what's the big dream for you as well? Like, what is the next? What is the dream for Frankie Ward? What's the next thing you're hoping to kind of is it going to be the face of the majors moving forward? Like are you very dedicated to Counter-Strike? What's for you next?
I would like to do LEC again, which is League of Legends, because I did a broadcast, like a guest kind of Counter-Strike crossover with Machine, who desk hosted the major. Is desk hosting the next one.
What a guy.
A great guy. And we went over and did that together and it was so much fun. So I'd like to go and do guest interviews for them again. I'd like to do more desk hosting again because I don't want to get rusty with it. To me, my big thing is to continue on Counter-Strike because I'm not doing the next major. So I'm hoping that people don't forget about me and still hire me to do stuff.
I've seen it myself. When people know that Frankie's going to be at an event now, people get excited that you're part of the roster. So I think it's great. Yeah,
just
want to keep working.
No, like
and earning a living and being okay.
Yeah. I don't think. I would like to maybe do some more mainstream gaming stuff. Like I would love to work with Channel 4, BBC, etc. I'd like to actually go back to traditional broadcasting as well and explore that. But at the same time, my first love is esports. So I want to be doing esports. I want to be doing Counter-Strike. I'd like to do a bit more PUBG because I got to do PUBG Mobile recently with my old PUBG gang, and it was really fun. And PUBG Mobile is a really exciting scene. It has 400 million players and then some around the world. That's insane.
Yeah, that is insane.
It's like people in India, they haven't heard of Fortnite, but they all play PUBG Mobile. If you're male and under 35 in India and you've got a mobile phone, you're probably playing PUBG Mobile every day.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So I would love to explore that scene more. And yeah, just keep working.
Yeah, totally.
I am so happy. I wanted to host things. I've done bits and pieces on YouTube. I did like a 30-part interactive video series where I interviewed comedians going to the Fringe, for example, a few years ago. So I'd always done bits and pieces. And I remember having this sort of chat with someone at the BBC about presenting and things like that. And she had half an hour with me and she was like, did a couple of exercises with me. And she said, you can do this, but like, what do you actually want to do? And like, what's your brand? What do you stand for? And I was like, I have no idea. And then I found
Good
gaming.
answer. Yeah.
And sounds cliche, but I found gaming and then I found myself. I suddenly found something I could truly, really talk about. And I found people, the community, I could talk about it with. And it was like that. It was right. And so I'm so lucky that I did that event, you know, at Wembley and made this into my life because, you know, no regrets. It's the best.
It's unbelievable. It's a great. I love your story. I think it's so nice to see as well. And may you continue smashing it from this point forward. And I hope the same thing. I hope esports goes a lot more mainstream. I think it's going that direction for sure. So all the best for the future, Frankie.
Thank
I'm looking forward to seeing you at other events we can or can't talk about. I don't know if we can, but
we'll definitely be working together.
We'll work together on some things that we can't say right now. But it'll definitely happen. Thank you for coming on The Savage Situation. Loved having you here, Frankie Ward. And we'll make sure to share your social details as well. And make sure to follow Frankie and her ever ongoing, brilliant, beautiful journey. And thanks for being on, Frankie.
Thank you.